Welcome to Biff's Mystery Theater. I have many tales to tell you. Ghost stories, murder stories, and tales that will make your bones chill. Join me, won't you? For Theater of the Mind, where you always have the best seat in the house. Now close your eyes and turn off the lights.
Good evening. This is Crime Classics. I am Thomas Highland with another true story of crime. Listen. 6 shots from a Colt 44. For no reason whatsoever other than to get your ear attuned to what you're going to hear. Of course, I might have said that the Colt 44 belonged to our hero, and our hero happened to be walking the field and plucking off railbirds, but he would have done that for no reason whatsoever, too. So, here we are. Our hero's name is William Bonney, a lad who was a product of his time, and whose time may be described as a blot. So tonight, my report to you on Billy Bonney, Bloodletter, also known as The Kid.
Crime Classics, a series of true crime stories from the records and newspapers of every land, from every time. Your host each week, Mr. Thomas Highland, connoisseur of crime, student of violence, and teller of murders. Now, once again, Mr. Thomas Highland.
William Bonney got to be 12 years old by being born in New York City in 1859 and being in Silver City, New Mexico in 1871. He was not tall for his age, but he was a smart one. Give him a pack of cards and say, "Billy, let's see you deal a full house from the bottom." And the boy's nimble fingers would flip 3 aces and 2 ladies in front of you quicker than shote with a cut snout. Or put a cue stick in his little fist, and if he didn't hit you with it, he'd run the rack. In rotation, like as not. Real smart. On a sunny day, you could see him walking down the shady side of the street, whistling and handling the oddments in his little pocket. A slingshot, a pair of dice, shaved, and a knife, razor sharp. There he goes.
Hi. I said hi, Mr. Garvey.
I'm playing cards, Billy. Get away.
I know you're playing cards, and I wish you luck. But I gotta talk to you.
Skedaddle.
My mother was crying this morning, Mr. Garvey. And she said your name.
Skedaddle.
Mr. Garvey.
Put that knife back in your pocket or I'll spank you. If you ain't the one, Billy.
Now, Billy dearly loved his mother, and he couldn't stand to see her cry. A good boy. He stabbed Mr. Garvey in the chest 3 times. Killed him. And when he went back to his mom, he told her that he taught that Mr. Garvey a thing or two, and she did this. Patted her son's tousled hair, gave him $5 silver, and told him to get out of town. Billy did. I'd like to now pick out a couple of more highlights at random. Events in Billy's life before he was 17. Here's one.
Morning, Mr. Carpa.
Morning, son.
What you doing feeding my horse, Mr. Carpa?
Ain't your horse, son.
'Tis.
Tain't.
'Tis.
Tain't.
'Twas. Here's another one.
Kid,
Yeah?
bet?
Bet what?
Like I've been saying. Bet you $25 I kill someone today before you do.
You mean it?
I mean it.
Stack me 25 on the table and I'll stack mine.
Sure.
Now it's a bet, all right, ain't it?
Now it's a bet.
Draw.
What?
Hot out there in the street, I'm staying here. So I'm provoking you to draw. You're an egg sucker, Tex.
Ain't no shorthorn like you gonna call me.
$50 on the red.
One of the outstanding events of Billy's life was the Lincoln County War. This was a war between two opposing factions in New Mexico, one led by Mr. Murphy, the other led by Mr. Chisholm and Mr. McSween. Now, Mr. Murphy had the law on his side, but Mr. Murphy and the law happened to be thieves. Mr. Chisholm and Mr. McSween were outside the law, but they were the good guys, and Billy the Kid was on their side. During this war, Billy killed 5 men. The 5th man died hard. The war was never really resolved in spite of the United States cavalry appearing at a fast trot from time to time, stopping, someone shouting forward, someone's blowing a bugle, and then trotting on again. And it was in this war that Billy grew to full stature, 5'8". Also, his reputation as a killer, 16 men since he was 12. Also, he liked to have his tousled hair played with.
What'd you say your name was?
Paulita.
Paulita.
And you they call Billy?
Yeah.
Billy. Billy. Niño.
Nino?
Boy. Young boy.
That's right. They call me Billy the Kid.
Listen.
What?
When I see you riding through Fort Sumner, when I see you, the way you are, riding the way you do, here is where the wings beat inside of me. Here.
I've been to your country. Did you know that?
Mexico?
Sure. 3 years ago. Killed a man in El Paso, and a posse chased me clear across the border.
And did you like my country?
Sure. Sorry to leave it, but I had to.
¿Por qué?
Killed a man in Sonora. Mexican police chased me back over to Rio Grande.
Billy.
Yeah?
Niño. Niño. Many girls in Fort Sumner do as I do. Watch you as you ride by. Then they meet together and talk of you and giggle.
What do they say?
Listen, I will tell you. Kiss me, Billy.
Yeah. I want to.
Billy.
You do that. What you were doing, Paulita.
¿Qué?
To my hair.
Like this?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the very moment that this was going on, and not dreamt of by our star-crossed lovers, who couldn't read anyhow, Ben-Hur was being written. The writer's name, as we all know, is Lew Wallace. He was in the area at the time, being governor and peacemaker.
That's that.
Another chapter done. The one where Ben-Hur and Marsala meet face-to-face and toss jibes. But the general's day is not over.
I
guess I'd better.
More writing to be done. So the general picks up his pen, writes, and when he's finished, reads over what he's written.
Dear Billy, you don't know me, but I know you. I'm your governor, and I want to see you. I've got a proposition that I think you might be interested in.
Hello, Governor.
Oh, hi, Billy.
Had your letter read to me by my partner, Charlie Beaudry. He says you got a proposition that's interesting to me.
I'm offering you amnesty, Billy.
What's that?
Don't wear your gun anymore, and no law is going to touch you.
I killed a lot of men, Governor. How come you're offering...
Just let's start having a little peace around here, that's all.
Oh, I'm for that, Governor. I've always been for that.
Well, now, I'm glad to hear it.
Except nobody will let me be peaceful.
Well, it's going to be different now.
Governor, you know what'd happen I put away my gun? I'd be shot down like a dog. I could name 12 men shoot me down as soon as I see I was wearing no gun. There's Bob Ollinger.
It's going to be different.
You take Ollinger, for instance. He's a deputy. He works for the sheriff. He'll be wearing a gun, won't he?
Yes, he would, but...
He'd shoot me like a dog.
How old are you, Billy?
18.
You got a lot of living ahead of you, son.
Not without no gun.
It's going to be different.
You say I got a lot of living to do, and I aim to do it, Governor. Just 'cause you say words like
amnesty.
Ain't no magic words to make me front Bob Ollinger, for instance, without no gun.
Billy, I've got something else to offer you.
What else?
When all the shooting's done, when the killing's over, how'd you like to be a sheriff?
Look down there, Beaudry. Bottom of the hill.
Yeah, I see him.
What you reckon they're doing?
Digging, I guess. Just digging. Maybe for a water hole or something. I don't know.
A man has to be crazy to be digging in this hot sun.
Me? Local.
You gotta admit something, Beaudry.
What?
I'm facing into the sun now, you know?
What are you gonna shoot those 3 fellas for? They ain't doing nothing.
You admit about the sun?
Sure.
You betting any money they ain't dead?
What'd you shoot them for?
For nothing at all.
'Cause you felt like it.
'Cause I felt like it. Yep.
I think it's safe to say that at this stage in his career, and until he died, Billy the Kid was a mad dog.
You are listening to Crime Classics and your host, Thomas Highland. Driving tonight? Then remember this. Most highway deaths are caused by 2 temptations, to cut out of line and to go too fast. Crossing the center line of the road is more dangerous than you realize. Statistics prove it. Excessive speed is just as dangerous as officials say. You can predict your own impulses, but you can never predict the other drivers when driving tonight. Drive cautiously, please. And now once again, Thomas Highland and the second act of Crime Classics, and his report to you on Billy Bonney Bloodletter, also known as the Kid.
You'll recall that earlier I referred to this era and scene of American history as a blot. Well, I've been thinking it over, and I must say that blot is a good word. It was a terrible time in New Mexico, pillar and murder and looting by a breed of men who did these things with no sense of shame or remorse. This bleak country was a kind of trail's end. The spoilers came here, and the buffalo killers and the gunslingers. I suppose it was as good a place as any to gather, because while they were killing each other off, they couldn't break anything. There was hardly anything there. A grand piano owned by a Mrs. McSween early went up in smoke during the Lincoln County War, and once a stray shot shattered Mrs. Gaffney's fluted tureen. But aside from these, a clever hand could mend anything in the area with adobe or a piece of wood. You may ask, then, why did all these people kill each other? My answer to you is, that's what happens in a blot. But in 1880, government officials in the area received notice to clean up. Therefore, General Lew Wallace summoned one Pat Garrett.
Got a paper here, Pat, from Washington. Says to clean up.
Uh-huh.
We're going to do it, too. But we're going to need your help. I heard you used to be a friend to Billy. Billy Bonney, Pat. The kid.
Uh-huh.
That's why I'm forgetting all the things I've heard about you. Probably lies anyhow. Want you to get Billy for me. Take a look. Pretty badge, isn't it, Pat?
Uh-huh.
Take it. Go ahead, take it. That's the boy. Now you just pin it on. I heard Billy's up around Fort Sumner, Pat. Headed that way, anyhow. Heard he sees a little Mexican girl who's kind of related to your wife.
Uh-huh.
I think you ought to go up to Fort Sumner. Take half a dozen men or so and go up there. I'm not making a mistake, am I, Pat? You are the man to take, Billy, aren't you?
Uh-huh.
Good luck, Sheriff.
About the events which took place outside of Fort Sumner. Well, let's see how they told about it at the time. Let's see how the boys who wrote the 19th century paperbacks had at it. Here's one. Written by Bledsoe Sheridan, Jr. and entitled Hero in Ambush or The Daring Escape of Brave Billy Bonney. Mr. Sheridan starts out this way. Pat Garrett squinted steely eyes off into the distance. He saw 6 horsemen. The sheriff turned to his lieutenant and he said,
Men, that is Billy, the young boy, and his desperado friends. The West will be a better place to live when he and his breed are 6 feet under. Get out your pistols, men, and make sure they're loaded up. You there, Pickus Bob, get behind that boulder, else they see you. Here they come.
And Bledsoe Sheridan, Jr. goes on. The desperados came within 100 feet of the boulders and were not aware of the ambush until... In spite of all the steely eyes that must have been on both sides of the ambush, and in spite of all the 6-shooters and shotguns, there wasn't a scratch in the crowd. Brave Billy Bonney and his merry band turned tail and fled. Bledsoe Jr.'s next chapter is aptly entitled Stinking Springs, for that is where we pick up the boys.
When we gonna rest, Billy?
Now on the way.
Then what?
They're gonna come after us. You know that, Bodie.
I asked you. Then what?
We're gonna rest at Stinking Springs down there. Down there's a place. Cabin place.
Fight it out there, Billy?
You scared?
You must be. You asked me a question like that.
4 of us. You, me, Wilson, Pickett. How many you figure they got?
That was Pat Garrett, wasn't it?
What I could see it was.
He can get all he wants. You scared, Billy?
You're talking foolish, Bodie.
Sure I am. Billy.
Yeah?
It's starting to snow.
Yeah.
One thing I'm glad about.
What?
Inside here ain't as cold as outside there. But Garrett and his boys are plenty cold. Plenty cold.
Hey, Garrett! Garrett, you cold? Come on in here. It's warm.
Come on out, Billy. I'll get some ham and some eggs.
Man, I'm hungry. Been in this place for 5 days. Bet you hungry too, ain't you, Wilson? Pickett? Man.
Come on in here, Garrett. Hey! Hey, Garrett!
And come in. They're not after you, though.
Billy!
Man, they got you.
Billy!
It looks like... Let me see. Looks like that got you, Bodie. Listen.
Billy!
Listen, Bodie. You going out there, you hear? You're done for anyhow. You going out there and get one of them before you die. Go on, Bodie. Just keep your coat pointing out, just like that. Now, you get one of them, you hear?
You dead, Baudry? Let me take a look. Yeah, dead. Hey, Billy! Charlie Baudry's dead. Coffee's hot, Billy. Won't you come on out? Hey, Pickett, Wilson, you hear me? Coffee's hot. Those are ham and eggs. Nobody's gonna hurt you, boys. All you gotta do is... Hello, Pickett. Just keep your hands way up there. You're not going to get hurt. Hi, Wilson. Glad to see you. Come on, get some coffee for yourself. Just take his gun and feed him, boys, like we promised to do. Hey, Billy!
Ain't going back to Fort Sumner, Pat.
Won't take you back to Fort Sumner, Billy. Take you to Santa Fe. How's that sound to you, Billy? Santa Fe.
Where?
I swear, Billy. Hi, Billy.
And then you know what? I'm gonna tell you what, Billy. You're gonna kill yourself throwing yourself against those bars. My name ain't Bob Orland. You ain't gonna cheat the rope, Billy. They found you guilty and you're gonna hang.
Before I do.
You're gonna do what?
Kill me, Bob Ollinger.
You ain't killing nobody.
I'm making me a promise. I'm gonna kill me, you.
Okay, Ollinger, I'll take Garden now.
Explain to Billy how we're gonna hang him. And watch how he does the thing. You gotta watch him. He don't kill himself. See you tomorrow, Billy.
Now, you know what, Billy? That Ollinger's a man I don't like. He did a thing to me once, and I'm going to tell you about it. Tomorrow you're going to die anyhow, and you won't have a chance to tell anybody.
Here was Ollinger, and there was my sister. My sister's dead now. Some people say, Billy, some people say, Billy, how'd you get my 2-barrel shotgun out of my hands without me knowing it? Open her up. Where'd I get me Bob Ollinger? Room up in front where he sleeps. This time of night, guess that's where he just went. Hi, Bob. You ain't laughing at all.
It's safe to assume that this was one of the happiest moments in Billy's life. He had killed a fellow he hated. He felt so good about it, he didn't even stop to wave ta-ta to Sheriff Pat Garrett. Just walked right out of there and drifted along down the trail, which trail wound up across the street from Pete Maxwell's, which just happened to be Paulita's place.
I love you, Billy.
Paulita.
I love you and worry for you.
Just love me. Just don't worry about me, that's all.
Billy.
What?
We can go to Mexico.
I've been thinking that.
Oh, bueno. When? When shall we go?
When you want to.
Right now. Oh, see, we will go. We will go to Mexico and marry and... You are serious?
Hungry, too. I'm going across to Maxwell's. Bring us back something other to eat.
Billy.
What do you want?
Be careful.
Petey Maxwell's my friend.
But be careful.
Let go of me. Let it go.
No, you say you'll be careful. I let go.
I'll be careful.
Kiss me. Hurry.
Somebody there? Somebody. Petey? Hey. Pete Maxwell?
Hi, kid.
Hey, what happened up there?
Billy the Kid.
What?
Billy the Kid. He's dead.
Well. Dead, is he?
Uh-huh.
Well. Hey, Billy the Kid's up here. Billy the Kid. He's dead.
That was July 14th, 1881. A killer was killed. A bloodbath was over. July 15th, 1881, was one of the finest days in the history of New Mexico.
In just a moment, Thomas Highland will tell you about next week's crime classic. Billy the Kid, tonight's crime classic, was adapted from the original court reports and newspaper accounts by Morton Fine and David Friedkin. The music was composed and conducted by Bernard Herrmann, and the program is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. Thomas Highland is portrayed on radio by Lou Merrill. In tonight's story, Sam Edwards was heard as Billy. Featured in the cast were Jane Webb, Clayton Post, Anthony Barrett, William Conrad, Dick Beals, Harry Bartell, Barney Phillips, and Fred Shields. Bob Lamont speaking. Here again is Thomas Highland.
Next week, Warwickshire, England, in the year 1705, and a lovely young lady whose married name was Catherine Hayes, and whose ambition was to be a widow. My report to you will be on John Hayes, his head, and how they were parted. Thank you. Good night.
Right after station's identification, keep tuned for a CBS Radio Sports exclusive as the middleweight champion of England meets the middleweight champ of America. Randy Turpin versus Bobo Olson, fighting 15 rounds for the title of the world. Yes, it's next, presented by CBS Radio. So stay tuned and hear it over most of these stations, coming right up. For newspaper adventure, Rogers of the Gazette on the CBS Radio Network.
Good evening. This is Crime Classics. I am Thomas Highland with another true story of crime. Listen. The good ship El Capitan used to sail the bay between Oakland and San Francisco in the 1870s, mostly in the fog. Its skipper was Captain Bill Tranchell, and he was known among the ferry boat set as having a heavy hand on the whistle. He found any number of excuses for tooting that whistle, but the one excuse which he never forgot was the time he was entertaining Mr. and Mrs. Crittenden on the bridge, and an uninvited lady named Mrs. Laura D. Fair suddenly threw open the door, walked over to Mr. Crittenden, and shot him through his heart. Captain Bill Tranchell, it must be admitted, for once lost all control. And unwittingly gave the nautical signal for icebergs in San Francisco Bay, which caused much hoisting of flags and battening of hatches, but could not change the fact that Mr. Crittenden was lying face downward on the deck. So, tonight, my report to you on the incredible trial of Laura D. Fair.
Crime Classics, a series of true crime stories taken from the records and newspapers of every land from every time. Your host each week, Mr. Thomas Highland, connoisseur of crime, student of violence, and teller of murders. Now, once again, Thomas Highland.
San Francisco in the 1870s was coming of age. It was getting civilized. By this I mean that gentlemen who carried guns wore them beneath their coats, and the can-can could be viewed by mixed company. And mixed company was the theme of the day. It was a very romantic time, and a time of elegance, of crystal chandeliers reflecting swirls of silken gowns, and from another angle so did polished brass cuspidors. Already the names Barbary Coast, Nob Hill, Gold Coast, and Chinatown were becoming legend. And if we are to believe all we hear, Grandfather didn't have it so tough. If he chanced to look over a certain fence on a spring day in 1870, he would have seen this. A lovely lady on a swing, dipping, swooping, gliding, soaring. A lovely lady with a lovely name, Laura. Laura with a rose twisted in her hair. And on the ground,
Isn't
her
my
mama
daughter a pretty sight, Mr. Crittenden?
and Mr. Crittenden, late of West Point, Kentucky, and Virginia City.
Truly the fairest of the fair, Mrs. Lane. Bewitching. If I didn't know otherwise, I'd say she'd been bred in the bluegrass.
My daughter's first husband was from the bluegrass country.
Now, how about her second husband?
He never did say. There was no one around who would ask him either.
Oh?
He was forever shooting things, walls, chickens, various things.
Your fair daughter has lived a fulsome life.
Look at her up there, like a ladybird.
Hello, Laura. Up there like a ladybird.
You're going to marry my daughter, Mr. Crittenden?
I fear she still grieves for her late husband.
Her third husband was tragic. Poor Colonel Fair.
That's the one who blew out his brains, isn't it?
I wonder why. Mr. Crittenden.
Yes?
You're going to marry my daughter?
If she weren't still grieving for the Colonel, why does she still bear his name? Why does she still call herself Laura Fair?
Why not? Look at her, swinging like she does. Have you seen a woman more fair?
No.
Laura, come down here. Oh, the grace of my daughter.
She is lovely.
But 32, going on 33, and she doesn't swing as high as she used to. Mr. Crittenden.
Yes?
Forgive me for being rude. I forgot to ask you. How is your wife?
In the best of health, thank you.
You must tell her soon that...
Mama, dear, you get on the swing, Mama, dear. And Mr. Crittenden will give you a start.
Oh, some other time. Mr. Crittenden and I were just talking about Mrs. Crittenden, dear.
Oh, how is she?
In the best of health, thank you.
Have you told her?
I told her you bore her no malice.
What did she say?
That she likes you, too.
Oh, I'm so happy. Now, you go home and tell her you want to marry me.
My dear Laura.
You go home and tell your wife you want to marry my daughter. Come along, Laura, dear. Let's chat.
So they went into the house and they chatted, Mama and Laura. And while they're doing this, let me fill you in with some background notes. Laura and Mama had newly arrived from Virginia City, where their family-style rooming house had netted them $45,000. During the years and the welter of collecting the rents, changing sheets and towels, and setting the board with succulents, Mama had gained and lost 3 sons-in-law. It seemed that fate consistently made her daughter a hard woman to be married to. Laura's 3 husbands, each of them, died. And as to our other principal, Alexander Parker Crittenden, he was a corporation lawyer with a wife and 7 children and 2 grandchildren. Once, hot and dusty and alone in Virginia City, he happened into Laura's house, made known his desire for a bath and rest. No sooner had he changed into fresh linens and had listened to Laura's tale of how she had become widowed recently than he became that weekend her star boarder. And, in turn, Laura and Mama were so taken with his quips and twinklings that they followed him to San Francisco. They took a house on Nob Hill, and there chatted and waited for a proposal of marriage. They understood the delay. They comprehended that Mr. Crittenden's wife was of a peculiar mold.
How is Laura, Alexander?
Fine, ma'am. Just fine.
And her mother?
Eager.
Eager?
Yes, ma'am. She wants me for her son-in-law.
And no wonder. You're a fine man, Alexander.
Thank you, ma'am.
And a good father.
I try to be.
And an excellent husband.
Yes, ma'am.
Such a man as you is hard to come by, Alexander, dear. I should miss you.
I should miss you.
Then it's settled. Laura and her mother will be our good friends.
But Laura wants me for her husband. She keeps asking me. And her mother, too.
Dear.
What?
Tell them no, but nicely.
I've told them.
Keep telling them.
You're a remarkable woman.
Thank you, Alexander.
To be friends with a woman who wants to take me away from you.
I respect ambitions and honesty. Laura has both. That she should love you has my complete understanding.
Ma'am.
Yes, Alexander?
I must tell you that you are a flower. Womanhood should be proud to number you among its sisters. How many's the time?
Alexander, we have an appointment for dinner tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am,
What is it, Alexander?
Laura loves me, and I think I might love her right back.
Why, then, eat your heart out, Alexander. Now hurry, dear. We're going out to dinner.
Oh?
I've sent a message to Laura to meet us at Furbisher's for dinner.
Oh.
I do so enjoy watching her eat. She's so ravenous. Well, hurry. Hurry along.
Mr. Crittenden,
Yes, Laura.
isn't today a pleasant one, though?
Every day is pleasant when I'm near you, dear Laura.
And last night, how wonderful. Sitting between you and your wife. What a wonderful woman she is.
I wish you two wouldn't like each other so much.
We both have the same consuming interest in life, Mr. Crittenden. You?
Laura,
Yes.
I must tell you that you are a flower. Womanhood should be proud.
When are we going to get married?
Soon.
Upon your honor?
Upon my honor.
You're a liar, Mr. Crittenden.
Laura.
Therefore, I shall not see you again ever.
Laura.
I've thought it over, and that's the way
I
it is.
love you, Laura.
And you love your wife, too.
I'd die without you.
You love your wife more than you love me.
No.
Swear it.
I swear it.
Liar.
I mean it, Laura. You'll see. I'll get rid of her somehow, and I'll marry you. I'll make her see that I don't love her. I won't even kiss her anymore.
Swear it.
I swear.
I'll race you to the tree, Mr. Crittenden.
All right.
Come on. Come on, Mr. Crittenden.
After that, there were more foot races
When is he going to marry you, Laura? Soon.
and much swinging in the garden.
Has he set the date for your marriage yet, Laura? Laura, come down out of there and talk to me.
And the tatting session.
Mama. What? I'm weary of his excuses.
And one day, wearily, she wandered down Market Street. There was a shop on Market Street run by a fellow who specialized in four-shooters. Now, a four-shooter is the same thing as a six-shooter, but it's for ladies because it weighs 2 shots less. Now, this fellow who specialized in four-shooters was such a persuasive salesman that no sooner had Laura pressed her pert little nose against his shop window that he had her inside measuring her palm for pistol grips. When this chap let her go, Laura was the proud owner of a pearl-handled pistol, which this chap personally guaranteed. And that was in the days when a guarantee meant something. Also, you must be told that on the morning the purchase was made, Laura had been without a husband for 1 whole year. Laura had never experienced this omission since she was 18 years old. So, gun in purse, she took to following Mr. Crittenden around. One night, she followed the gentleman and his wife through the fog onto a boat called El Capitan. This was the ferry boat between Oakland and San Francisco. Its skipper, you remember, was Bill Tranchell, the heavy-handed fellow who liked to entertain on his glass-enclosed bridge.
A toast.
Well, thank you, Captain. Thank you very much.
To your very good health, sir. And to the health of your very charming wife.
And to yours, Captain.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, this place is getting overrun with tugboats. That'll show 'em.
Well, shall we drink?
Go right ahead.
Ma'am,
Yes, Alexander.
tonight, somehow, you appear radiant.
Oh, dear Alexander.
Ma'am, you're very dear to me.
Dear, dear.
Captain, you don't mind if I kiss the lady?
Oh, you just go right ahead.
Ah, dear lady. Laura!
No, you listen here.
You said you wouldn't kiss her anymore.
I leave you for the moment with this note. Though he died face to the deck, Mr. Crittenden was not buried at sea.
You are listening to Crime Classics and your host, Thomas Highland, and his report to you on the incredible trial of Laura D. Fair. In 1870, San Francisco was a city where violence was commonplace. But this violence was by far predominantly of the species male slaughtering male, or male doing in female. So when Laura Fair shot Mr. Crittenden on a ferry boat, she practically invented a category and thereby caused a stir. It planted ideas in feminine minds where such ideas never dared to be. The sale of four-shooters skyrocketed, and somehow the sale of marriage licenses likewise. The episode on the ferry boat was a shot in the arm for the suffragette movement. Too, the entertainment business slumped, as many a husband spent more evenings in the bosom of his family. It was a city seething with unrest, with slow change, with static passion. It was a city whose entire attentions were focused on the trial of Laura D. Fair for the murder of Alexander Parker Crittenden.
There will be order in the court. You may continue with your testimony, Captain Fanchel.
There he was, kissing that lady over there.
I refuse to be referred to as that lady over there. I was his wife. No, you are not. I was.
Mrs. Fair,
Yes, Your Honor.
how do you explain you were Mr. Crittenden's wife?
I was. Not that woman over there. I refuse to be referred to as that.
You will get your chance to testify, Mrs. Crittenden. Mrs. Fair will answer the question.
I thought I was on the witness box here, Your Honor.
In a moment, Captain. I wish to hear why Mrs. Fair considered herself to be the wife of Mr. Crittenden.
Since the moment we were both born, our love was made in heaven and our marriage too.
I warn the spectators that another such outburst may cause me to clear the court. Go on, Mrs. Fair.
Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
My feelings for Mr. Crittenden would have been profane had they not been made sacred in heaven.
Silence! 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 Sergeant at Arms will bring forward immediately the parties that applauded.
I applauded more than anyone else, Your Honor.
The Sergeant at Arms will bring forward that lady.
I applauded more than her.
And will bring forward that man, too.
Judge, it was my fault.
Of course not, Mrs. Fair. You were not to blame for the disturbance.
Well, Judge, human nature could not stand the denial of the truth by that lady over there. It was I, indeed, who was married to Mr. Crittenden.
What is your name, sir?
Francis Amuse.
Did you applaud?
I stamped my foot.
Why did you stamp your foot?
I felt the compulsion.
Why?
When I was carried away with what Mrs. Fair said, I felt the compulsion.
I fine you $25.
Judge,
Yes, Mrs. Fair.
I will pay it.
You are dismissed, Mr. Hughes.
Oh, bless you, Mrs. Fair. Bless you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
And your name, madam?
Emily Pitt Stevens.
Did you applaud?
I said, good, good. And I put my hand down on the bench in front of me, so.
You are fined $25.
But I made no noise with my feet.
But with your hands, you did.
With my hand, I did.
You are fined $25.
I will pay it. Thank you, Mrs. Fair. And thank you. I rather believe you than that woman over there.
Mrs. Fair, You will have to draw heavily upon your bank if you will pay the fines of all who applauded.
As long as you fine them for cheering me, I will pay those fines.
Your Honor, just a moment, Captain. I just wanted you to know what could happen, Mrs. Fair.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Captain, you may proceed.
And Mrs. Fair came in and shot him with a 4-shooter.
That's all. Thank you, Captain. You may step down.
Yes, I have the court reports here. And that's what they say. And if you think this was an unseemly way to conduct a trial, I have something else here. I'd like to read it to you. This is a consensus of legal opinion of the time, and I quote, "The trial was conducted in the main thoroughly and well, with somewhat less regard for the decorum of the courtroom than is customary in most eastern cities, though far in advance of the practice in New York City in this respect." Unquote. And now that we have resolved any uneasiness you may have had about the conduct of the trial, let's listen in again. Mama on the stand is an imposing figure. She wears brocaded black and a great veil that drops from her hat to her waist. Her feet, however, were cold.
Bring the lady a foot warmer. That cushion will do.
Thank you, my neck. I think that'll be much better, Judge. Thank you.
Your feet will warm up in no time at all.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
And now, what were you saying about your daughter?
I've always had trouble with her.
I know what you mean, being a parent myself.
Oh, not like Laura.
What do you mean?
Doctors, doctors, doctors. My daughter has tried to kill herself on numerous occasions. There's madness in the family. Besides, my daughter's second husband was mad. I don't think that helped. Grief and doctors and madness. I tell you, raising Laura was trying. But I think I did a pretty good job. Although my daughter is not sane, you know.
Not sane?
Crazy.
And doctors were called to corroborate, and this they did. Little-known facts about Laura Fair were brought to light and caused more nudging of elbows than applause. Some of her ailments, described by the learned physicians, had symptoms that weren't talked about very much in those days. One medico described the raving exhibition put on by Laura, a recounting of which held spellbound his students at medical college. Another doctor described a malady owned by Laura Fair so vividly in one of the trade journals that he was considered 20 years ahead of his time. When faced with these revelations, Laura accepted them by lowering her eyes modestly. Dr. Leonard Bifrosser, chief spokesman for the doctors, summed up medical testimony by suggesting strongly that Laura was unconscious when she shot Mr. Just a moment. That's what it says. Laura was unconscious when she shot Mr. Crittenden. Back to the trial now, and the lady who became Mrs. Crittenden by marrying Alexander in the city hall, somewhere in Kentucky.
It is ridiculous to believe there is madness in that woman over there. She's vicious, predatory, and since the moment she was thrown in contact with my husband, she pursued him, worried him, and pled with him to marry her. That this necessitated getting rid of me didn't worry her in the least. She killed my husband out of frustration and anger. That woman there!
The high spot of the trial was on a morning in November. The court had denied Laura permission to lie on her lounge, upon which she had reclined throughout the trial. So Laura has been made to arise and take the stand, was so sworn in, demanded and received a foot warmer, and said interesting things like this.
I told Mr. Crittenden to let his wife keep the furniture. I told him we could get new furniture in a new home. And that in every corner in each room we could kiss. And he could hold me in his arms in each chair, sit by me on the sofa, hang over me while I played his favorite march on the piano.
In the afternoon, she enthralled listeners with this.
And I remember well when Mr. Crittenden took me on his knee, put arm about my neck, his dear face close to mine.
And he whispered... Shall I say it, Judge?
Please do.
He whispered that he would cross mountains unshod, walk through storm uncovered to come to me. He said he cared not for hardship nor exposure, for every step he took brought him nearer to me. To the other and better half of his own soul, he would tell me. Shall I go on?
Please do.
The night it is said I shot him, I can remember only glass.
Glass?
Cold to the touch, and through it, a disagreeable and peculiar voice.
Did you recognize the voice?
That woman over there.
Continue.
I put my hand against this glass, and it opened, and I saw Mr. Crittenden leaning close to a woman and kissing her, and I felt myself slip into an awful pit of blackness. I do not remember how I got away from there, or what was done to me after.
Gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
The accused will rise from her lounge and face the jury. The jury will face the accused. And what is your verdict?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
Was led away to jail. An enterprising young reporter of the time, Garth Prebles, interviewed her in her cell, where he learned and had published the fact that Mrs. Fair had spent $12,000 in her defense. Chicken feed to what she spent on her second trial, which was in the amount of $30,000, and which broke her. Where this $30,000 went to is a mystery, since the second trial was not nearly so spectacular as the first. Captain Billy Tranchell of the ferry boat El Capitan somehow was not there as a witness. There was a new judge, too, who in later years became known as Kindly Judge Reardon, and a new jury, 12 men and true out of 400 examined.
And our love was a greater love than is given to most women.
That was the second trial, and that was Laura again. And this time, another verdict. Not guilty. So, after acquittal, she went on a lecture tour and told of her hardships. That was Mama, tambourine handler, advance man, and treasurer.
How did we do, Mama?
$1.85. When you lecture tonight, honey, pep it up a little. Promise, Mama, will you?
I'll make it real peppy, Mama.
Mama passed her last tambourine one cold winter's night in Sacramento in the year 1889. But Laura lived on. She lived until the age of 82, after another husband and another long period of widowhood. Until the moment of her death, she insisted that Mr. Crittenden had only been her very good friend. And once, in a moment of mutual transgression, they held each other's hand. That's what it says, right here.
In just a moment, Thomas Highland will tell you about next week's crime classic. Laura D. Fair, tonight's crime classic was adapted from the original court reports and newspaper accounts by Morton Fine and David Friedkin. The music was adapted from themes of the period and conducted by Bernard Herrmann, and the program is produced and directed by Elliot Lewis. Thomas Highland is portrayed on radio by Lou Merrill. In tonight's story, Mary Jane Croft was heard as Laura and Florence Walcott as Mama. Featured in the cast were Herb Butterfield, William Johnstone, Paula Winslow, Gene Wood, and Joseph Granby. Hugh Douglas speaking. And here again is Thomas Highland.
Next week, Ham, England, in the year 1673, a time of money cutting and highwaymen, and of course, violent death. My report to you will be on the Alsop family, how it diminished and grew again. Thank you. Good night.
Crime Classics has come to you through the worldwide facilities of the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.
Crime Classics, brought to you by Plymouth, with a reminder that tomorrow is the day for your first look at the big, bright, beautiful new 54 Plymouth. On display tomorrow.
Good evening. I am Thomas Highland with another true story of crime. Listen. That was a cake baker breaking an egg and separating it, the white here, the yolk here. That was the last of 12 eggs to be separated. Next step in the recipe, beat the whites. Our cake baker is French and a good baker, too, so, of course, the cake will be of a lightness and a delicacy that... a cake that kisses back. Pour in the sugar, the flour, and now the ingredient that makes this cake different from all other cakes. You didn't hear anything because it was only a smidgen. And smidgens don't make any more noise. Not even a smidgen of arsenic, which that was. The noise comes later. So tonight, my report to you on the 7-layered arsenic cake of Madame Lafarge.
Crime Classics, a new series of true crime stories taken from the records and newspapers of every land from every time. Your host each week, Mr. Thomas Highland, connoisseur of crime, student of violence, and teller of murders. First, a message for all of you.
This is the week, tomorrow's the day. The day the great new 54 high-style Plymouth comes to town, and the $25,000 contest, with a chance for you to win a brand new 54 Plymouth or one of hundreds of cash prizes.
You'll love the new 54 Plymouth. It's big, bright, beautiful. Longer this year with a low, wide, sleek silhouette. And inside, Plymouth brings to the low-price field the luxury of high-style interiors with an exciting array of new fabrics and color combinations for you to choose from.
Power steering is available in the new 54 Plymouth. Full-time power steering to help you every mile you drive. And you like the way it makes parking in tight places a cinch because it does 80% of the work for you.
3 new Plymouth lines this year, too. New Plaza, New Savoy, New Belvedere. 3 separate lines, and in every line a wide selection of body styles and color combinations to choose from.
The 54 Plymouth has 64 new features and advancements. Yes, it's 64 for 54. And tomorrow's your day for a first-hand look at this dramatic new car.
Tomorrow starts the Big Plymouth contest, too. So be sure to get your entry blank from your Plymouth dealer when you go in to see the big, bright, beautiful new 54 Plymouth tomorrow.
And now, once again, Mr. Thomas Highland and his report on the 7-layered arsenic cake of Madame Lafarge.
France As the fourth decade of the 19th century was closing, Louis Philippe was on the throne. It was late summer of 1839, a season of unrest in Paris. In the dark alleys and dank cellars, a populace seethed and grumbled and wrote slogans in chalk on the cobblestones. Phrases such as allons, à bas, en avant, au guillotine, which meant that in this stage people were either for things or against things, or wanted them up or down or forward or guillotined. This was in the city. But a few kilometers away in the country, in Glandier, it was peaceful. Summer was dying gently, and the folk took their cue from nature.
I'm quite sure she will be eminently satisfactory, madame. Her name is Marie Fortuné Capello. It is music, no? Marie Fortuné Capello.
Is she rich?
She has 25,000 francs in her own name.
Marie Fortuné Capello.
She will make a most excellent daughter-in-law to you, madame. I personally will guarantee it.
Huh?
I only meant that she is of quality. I personally knew her father, an artilleryman to Napoleon.
Sterling.
Who froze to his cannon outside of Moscow.
Commendable.
So, you see, you have come to the correct marriage broker. Madame.
Yes?
Your son, Charles, he has been apprised of the arrangement you are negotiating for him?
25,000 francs.
Yes, and her own trousseau.
He has been apprised.
Go to him then and tell him he is most fortunate. His beloved is not only of wealth, but of beauty. We are in agreement, madame?
She is in good health?
Excellent.
She has never been married before?
Never.
Then we are in agreement.
Therefore, if you please...
10% of 25,000.
2,500 francs.
Here. 3,000.
And 500 francs change. Madame.
Yes?
Your son, your fortunate son, Charles.
Yes?
He still spends his time at the blast furnace?
I cannot get him interested in anything else.
Strange. I only say this because I recall in my youth there were other things to do. Strolling, picnics in the Bois.
My son Charles is a young man who likes to spend his time at the blast furnace.
To each his own, eh, madame? Goodbye, madame.
Charles Lafarge was one of those rare individuals who was just a natural-born smelter, an unsung Bessemer, as it were. In his early youth, he evinced a healthy interest in iron things and tongs and anvils and blast furnaces. His father had died while fishing for bloaters in the Seine, this when Charles was 3 years old. His mother, a good woman, was quick to recognize her son's natural bent and indulged his talents. As a matter of fact, she invested nearly all her savings in a blast furnace and an ironmongery business for her son. Charles spent most of his waking hours in the shop, shaping things on the anvil, cooling metal, or what he liked best to do, smelting. He was doing that the day his mother broke the news to him.
Her name is Marie Fortuné Capello.
And he was 6 feet 4 inches tall.
What of her?
You will marry her.
Why?
All young men get married. You'll have a wife now, son. Son.
Yes, Mama.
Come here to me, closer. I want to look at you.
At what do you look, Mama?
Nothing. You'd better get cleaned up.
And he did. Charles got cleaned up. He bathed, shaved, and got into the clothes of a gentleman of the country. He was introduced to his fiancée, made guttural noises of approval, and in a few hours they were married. The ceremony took place in the empty and dismal halls of the Lafarge castle. In attendance were Mamma Lafarge and one Denis Barbier. Denis, it should be mentioned, was an employee and bosom friend to Charles. And it must be assumed that Dennis was happy for his friend for having brought such a winsome and lovely creature into an abode usually reek with odors of sulfur and slag. At the end of the ceremony, Dennis offered his arm to Mama, and they left. Then, this is what happened to the newlyweds.
But it frightens me.
Frightens?
Please.
Frightens? How?
The terrible heat of it.
Well, it is a fire. It is hot. How frightens?
Please.
Hey, look to me.
Yes.
This bar, this iron bar. You see it bending. It. Look. Why did you not look?
I do not know.
My mama said to me you would do what I say you do.
I will try.
Well, then look to me.
Yes.
This metal piece, this round metal piece, you see?
Yes.
For you.
What?
For you.
I don't...
To lock about you if you will run away from me.
A shackle?
Do not run away from me.
Oh, don't touch me.
Husband to you.
It is not your husband, madame. It is I. It is Dennis. It is Dennis. Dennis.
What do you want?
Your husband sent me to speak with you. May I come in? Your husband said I was to enter your rooms and to speak with you. Thank you, madame.
To speak to me of what?
Madame, how long has it been since you've been here in the chateau?
You know it. 4 months more.
Such joy you have brought to all of us. Of course, we have not seen much of you since you've locked yourself in your room for the most part, but if this makes you happy, all of us are happy.
Say what you wish to say and get out.
I bring sad news.
What?
Your husband has gone to Paris alone. I will turn my back while you weep. You finished? Oh, madame, you look so radiant after a good cry.
When did he go?
This morning.
Oh.
He has a plan for a blast furnace, a new principle.
My husband.
He was introduced to pencil and paper just last week, and already he has the theory for a new furnace. Remarkable, is it not?
I wish him well.
He asked me, shy man that he is, to say another thing. The 25,000 francs, which is banked in your name, he wishes it. Where are you, madame? Poor madame. Where are you, madame? I would give it to him. Just a while ago, below at the furnace, he fashioned a thing. Oh, it's diabolical, the equipment your husband can make. Before he left, he lifted it up with both hands and said, "Just my wife's size." Ugh.
And if I give it to him?
He will have compassion for you. He says only that. He will honor your desire to remain alone.
Very well.
Ah, you are a good wife. Oh, a word.
Yes?
I, too, have compassion for you. You must understand that.
Compassion? Why?
Your husband is a brute. He is a brute. He is also an imbecile.
Yes.
He is better off if he is dead.
Yes.
What?
I said yes. He is better off if he is dead.
Of course he is. Madame, I take your leave. Madame Lafarge, open quickly, open.
Monsieur Dennis.
Madame.
What are you doing in my chamber?
A terrible thing, so terrible.
What are you talking about?
What she has said.
Who?
The wife of your son. She said
What? What is it?
That she wished your son dead.
I'm sure every wife in the world has wished her husband dead at one time or another.
But the way it was said.
How?
With a kind of madness, with a curling of the lips, a clawing of the hand, with hate, with purpose. I wish my husband dead, she said. The heavens give me strength to make it so, she said.
No.
Yes.
This banter kept up a few moments more. Then Mama became firmly convinced that she had a potential murderess for a daughter-in-law. Dennis, on the other hand, went to the pharmacy and bought some arsenic.
You are listening to Crime Classics and your host, Mr. Thomas Highland.
How would you like to win a smart new 54 Plymouth convertible? Well, you couldn't get one for doing less, so be sure to enter the exciting Plymouth contest that starts tomorrow. $25,000 worth of prizes in all, 6 sleek new 54 Plymouths to be given away, and hundreds of cash prizes. How do you enter? Easy.
Tomorrow, visit any Plymouth dealer and see the exciting new 54 Plymouth. Look it over, sit in it, ask questions. Then, on an entry blank your Plymouth dealer will give you, just tell in 50 words or less what you like most about the new 54 high-style Plymouth.
And with 64 new features and advancements to choose from, there's plenty to write about.
For instance, find out about Plymouth's new High Drive, newest, smoothest, no-shift drive in the low-price field at only slight extra cost.
So be sure to visit your Plymouth dealers tomorrow. See this big, bright, beautiful new 54 Plymouth and enter the contest.
Don't put it off either, because the contest closes Monday at midnight. Be sure to see the new 54 high-style Plymouth tomorrow.
And now, once again, Thomas Highland and the second act of Crime Classics and his report to you on the 7-layered arsenic cake of Madame Lafarge.
If you happen to pick up any standard almanac of France for the year 1840 and look up the climate for the first week of the year, you will read Il fait froid. That's the French way for putting it that there were blizzards and snows and hails and sleets and cold rains. As a matter of fact, this was one of the most miserable weeks in the annals of French weather. It is only legend, but it's worth mentioning. A freak storm up from the provinces caused a fall of frozen bloaters on the banks of the Seine. And northward, in the town of Glandier, the blizzard swirled bleakly around the parapets of the Lafarge castle. But on the main floor, in a kitchen lighted by a roaring blaze and warmed by a scene of domestic enterprise...
Now you must take the dough and roll it. There, on the table of my aunt.
Your aunt must have been too generous, Madame Lafarge, to have given you so much furniture.
Knead the dough, daughter-in-law. And... now I must ask you a question.
What is it?
Do you hate my son, your husband?
I will answer you. At times I do hate him.
This I can understand. But do you wish him dead?
Oh, no. Oh, perhaps in a burst of fury, yes, but... oh, no, he...
Yes?
Like a child. Like a small child.
Dennis said...
What?
Nothing. Dennis is so quick to take offense. He cares so much for my son. Have you noticed? Truly a friend, truly.
I feel for your son. Somehow, right now I feel for your son a warmth. So the baking of these cakes, which I will send to him in Paris.
I am the most fortunate of mothers-in-law.
I have resolved to give my marriage every chance to forget what has happened. Therefore, I will do as my husband bids.
You will send him the money?
All of it that is in my name.
25,000 francs?
To the sou. I will send it along with the cake.
Marie.
Yes, dear mother-in-law?
You are good. It is important that Charles build his blast furnace. When that is done...
Never mind. Here, will you put the dough in the pan? There should be enough to fill those 5 small ones.
Gladly.
I will wash my hands and write Charles a note.
You'll find the pen on the desk of my aunt. And when you are finished, we will put it with the cakes and the money. And Dennis will mail all of it. Let me kiss you.
And they offered each other their cheeks. Then Marie washed her hands and wrote her husband a tender note. Madame Lafarge put the cakes, 5 small ones, into the oven, which her aunt had willed to her, and dozed for a while in her aunt's favorite chair. Then the cakes were ready. They were iced and wrapped. Into the parcel was then inserted an envelope containing 25,000 francs, and a few words of encouragement and endearment and new resolution. Then...
Dennis?
Madame and Madame.
Dennis, take this parcel and mail it to Monsieur Lafarge in Paris. It contains cakes and money, so mail it with dispatch. And Dennis, my mother-in-law and I would appreciate an opportunity to become more... Well, you may spend a few days where you wish, Dennis. Not here. Not here, Dennis.
Not here, Dennis.
Oh, Charles Lafarge got the parcel all right. It was mailed all right, and he got it. But if you think for one moment that Dennis was there when it arrived, you're right.
So, my dear friend Charles, I thought that you would be lonesome in Paris. So many of the young men get lonely in Paris.
You are good.
So I thought to... Now, who could that be? Charles. Charles?
Now, who could that be?
May I see? I will see. Oh. Well, thank you. A package for you, Charles.
A package?
Yes, it is. May I open it for you? I will open it for you. It's from Glandier. From your wife. What could it be?
I feel kindly toward my wife. Perhaps when this of the blast furnace is done, when I get back to Glandier, I will...
A cake?
I like cake.
Such a large cake. And here, an envelope. Ooh, money.
How much?
3,000 francs.
I hoped she'd send the 25.
Oh, there is a note here, too.
Read it to me.
Dear Charles, keep warm. Here is cake, here is money. Your wife, Marie. Charles?
Yes?
May I cut a piece of cake for you? I will cut a piece of cake for you. Myself, I will eat none of it. My stomach is turning into a paunch.
It is a fine-looking cake.
Here. Eat. Do you like it? Is it good? Is it light?
Yeah. More.
Here. Eat. What's the matter?
The cake lies against my heart.
Oh?
Painfully. With much...
Help! Help! My friend is sick! Doctor! Doctor! My friend has eaten of cake and he is sick! His wife sent him cake and he is sick! His wife sent him cake and he became sick, Inspector. I do not wish to say it, but you forgive me, do you not? Yes, you do. I was in the presence of his wife when she said she wished her husband dead, that she thought him a brute and an imbecile, and she wished him dead. And then she sent me to buy arsenic for mice, she said. For mice. Then this cake comes to my friend Charles Lafarge, and he eats of it, and now he is dead. Inspector, you forced me to say it. I did not wish to say it, but you forced me.
Marie Fortuné Capello Lafarge was arrested on the charge of murder. She was put in prison in January 1841 and brought to trial in July. It is safe to say that this period was a time of travail, for Marie lost 40 pounds, her golden hair turned to silver, and her youthful complexion turned ashen. These, in the main, were observations made by Raoul Lacy, the George Garvey of the Fourth Estate of that day. Nor, during the trial, were the interrogations less unmerciful. She was asked, first of all, whether she loved her husband.
Less, perhaps, than other women. More, perhaps, than some.
And did she ever say she wished him dead?
No, not meaningly.
May I make a statement? My name is Denis Barbier. Charles Lafarge was my good friend. We addressed each other in the second person singular, familiar as tu. I grieve for his death. I grieve that his widow has been placed in such a precarious position. Yet I am forced to say that I, Denis Barbier, friend of Charles Lafarge, did hear Marie Lafarge wish her husband dead meaningly.
You provoked me.
Poor little thing.
You did. You provoked me.
If you wish to say so, I will not disagree. Wife to my friend Charles Lafarge, now dead by poison.
Of arsenic, indeed, which Dennis himself had purchased.
I myself purchased the arsenic and gave it to you.
It was for mice.
For mice, if you wish to say so, I will never disagree.
It was for mice.
For mice.
Ask my mother-in-law. Ask her.
Madame Lafarge.
Very well. I recall no mice. I run a clean chateau.
And your daughter-in-law says for mice. I say you killed my dear friend Charles Lafarge. Murderess!
No!
Murderess!
No!
Yes!
And what of the cake?
There were 5 small cakes.
There was but one cake, a large cake of 7 layers.
Ask my mother-in-law. Ask her.
Madame Lafarge.
I do not remember.
You yourself put them in those 5 pans.
I do not remember. Murderous!
No!
Yes!
And what of the money?
From the bank, I took 25,000 francs and put them in the parcels.
There was only 3,000 francs in the parcel. Murderess! Murderess! Murderess!
Marie Lafarge was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment at hard labor. Also, occasional exposures in the pillories. Then Mama, 12 years later on her deathbed, suddenly...
I remember. It was not a 7-layered cake. It was 5 small ones which Mary sent to my son. Something must be done.
And something was done. Marie Lafarge, who had already served 12 years, had her sentence reduced to just 5 more years. Then she was sent to a home. Then she killed herself. Thomas Highland will return in just a moment to tell you about next week's Crime Classic.
It's big, the 54 Plymouth, it's bright. The 54 Plymouth, big, bright, beautiful too. The 54 Plymouth is the car for you.
Yes, the new 54 high-style Plymouth is the car for you, and tomorrow's the day to see it.
Tomorrow's also the day to enter the big $25,000 Plymouth contest. You'll find all the easy rules and a complete list of prizes on the entry blank your Plymouth dealer has for you.
So remember, you have a date tomorrow to see the big, bright, beautiful new 1954 Plymouth.
And here again is Thomas Highland.
Next week, the broad state of New Mexico, at a time when it was worth your life to walk down the street, armed or unarmed, day or night. My report to you will be on Billy Bonney Bloodletter, also known as the Kid. Thank you. Good night.
Madame Lafarge, tonight's crime classic, was adapted from the original court reports and newspaper accounts by Morton Fine and David Friedkin. The music was composed and conducted by Bernard Herrmann, and the program is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. Thomas Highland is portrayed on radio by Lou Merrill. In tonight's story, Eve McVeigh was heard as Marie, Irene Tedrow as Madame Lafarge, Joseph Kearns as Dennis, Edgar Barrier as Noonie, and William Conrad as Charles. Roy Rowan speaking. Crime Classics was brought to you by Plymouth, with a reminder that the new 54 high-style Plymouth comes to town tomorrow. Be sure to see it. This is the CBS Radio Network.
Good evening. This is Crime Classics. I am Thomas Highland with another true story of crime. Listen. The glass you just heard broken was not ordinary glass. It was a closed vessel of exact contour of the man's head which it held. It was raised exactly 1 millimeter above the skin, all around, and above the hair. No small feat, since the hair on the head was lush and curly. Another masterpiece by Dom Llewellyn, whose secret of blowing glass to enclose human heads died when he died. Dom Llewellyn had been called in to do a job of work on what was left of Mr. John Hayes, which was all above the neck. So tonight, my report to you on John Hayes, his head, and how they were parted.
Crime Classics, a series of true crime stories from the records and newspapers of every land, from every time. Your host each week, Mr. Thomas Highland, connoisseur of crime, student of violence, and teller of murders. Now once again, Mr. Thomas Highland.
The 18th century was only a few years old, and the town was Warwick, and the season was spring. Things were budding all around, trees, flowers, and there happened to be a 16-year-old girl named Catherine Hall. She appears suddenly in history, this girl, walking down the road. Suddenly, because nobody knows what parentage put her there. Isn't that nice? A young girl swinging down a road in May. Tra-la-la-lying. Skipping. Stops. Together nuts. And alongside her, 3 soldiers, officers of His Majesty's Dragoons, and gentlemen. Gentlemen 3, and guardians of Catherine, and Lieutenant Ombersley has the papers in his bandolier to prove it. Guardians and their ward at a crossroad.
Catherine?
Yes, Uncle.
Uncle Fred and Uncle Ned and I think the time has come...
For what, Uncle?
The time has come...
Do not be shy. How is it that always you're shy when the sun shines?
We have a wedding gift for you.
Uncle.
From all of us to you.
Uncles.
The gift, here, a scarf.
Uncles.
We'll miss you.
And I you.
And the time now to tell you of him, of the man you will marry. Of the man who comes down this road anon to take you from us, from Uncle Fred and Uncle Ned and myself.
Is he as tall as you?
He is very rich.
Is he as handsome as Uncle Ned?
He is very rich.
And has he the strength of Uncle Fred?
He is very rich.
Then I know I shall love him well.
Catherine.
Yes, Uncle.
Your duties as wife.
Yes, Uncle.
Always water in the pail, and loving nuptials cannot fail.
And?
Happy marriage in a springtime day, child in the cradle on New Year's Day.
Oh, yes, Uncle. Oh, yes, Uncle.
He is prompt.
I die with impatience.
He has a fine span of horses, see?
Oh, trembling.
Oh, John Hayes! Oh!
You, girl. If your name be Catherine, get in.
Uncle?
Get in, girl, get in.
A kiss, Uncle, for farewell to you and Uncle Ned.
Which we did in tears and kisses the whole night past. Get in, girl, get in.
Here's your money, Lieutenant. Small sackful, as was contracted for. Giddy up.
They were married that night, these impetuous 18th century lovers, these young people, Catherine Hall and John Hayes. History records that it was a rather hectic marriage. The groom's father went temporarily blind from drink before the ceremony. There was unruliness among the servants, and some sources state that the bride herself tried to sneak off and had to be restrained. But married they were just as evening sun went down. And that evening, after the house of John Hayes had quieted down, after the pig had been eaten and the toast drunk, after the celebrants had gone home and the windows bolted and the doors barred, after all these things...
There you are. There you are. Come on out now. There you are. Liberty Bird.
You know what you ought to do.
What?
Join the army.
Join the army?
Join the army.
Why should I do that?
I'd be so proud of you.
Aren't you proud of me now?
Think of you in a uniform.
I never did.
Well, then let's do it.
All right.
The scarlet trousers and the scarlet coat.
Oh, my.
And the golden sash and the gleaming scabbard.
And I'd stand up straight like this.
On your curly hair, a three-cornered hat and a cockade.
And I'd march. And I'd march.
And perhaps...
what?
They'd send you to America.
Yes! No.
You could volunteer for it.
Oh, no. You'd miss me too much. You'd suffer.
Oh, I'd write to you every day.
Well, the boats to America do not sail very often.
I'd knit things for you and bake things for you. But mostly...
What?
I'd be proud. Oh, so proud. Dear John.
Well, I don't know.
Join the army.
Proud?
Yes.
What would you do?
Well, tell people. John.
Yes.
Golden sash and gleaming scabbard, and on your head a three-cornered hat with a cockade, John. And you'd march so straight and tall, you'd march...
like this?
Yes.
Like this?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Dear Father, I am writing this letter to tell you that I have just come back from a 20-mile march under full pack, and I do not like it. In the 6 months I have been in the army, I have not found a thing that I like about it. It is march, 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 march. In spite of my education, I am still but a grenadier. 2 of the lads who joined the army with me are lieutenants and wear cockades, so... Please, dear Father, present the government with £20 and secure my release from this life. I would do it with my own funds, but I had wisdom enough to assign my wealth to my wife's name before joining the army. I do not wish to bother Catherine in this matter, as I'm going to surprise her by my appearance in civilian garb and put an end to her loneliness. Please, Father, do me this favor, your loving son, John. Oh, P.S. Please, Father, just consider it a loan.
That curious tailor from Tottenham.
Oh, Mr. Wood, you're the one.
And how about me?
Oh, you're a one too, Mr. Billings. If it's the butcher boy, Mr. Wood.
Yeah, I'll send him on his way. Aye.
Who are you?
Who are you?
I am John Hayes.
Who?
John Hayes.
Oh, you be in the army.
Oh, not now. I am John Hayes, and I've come home to my wife. Where is she? Catherine!
Who is it?
Catherine! Catherine, I'm home!
Dirty deserter.
No.
Oh, shame.
Oh, listen, I'm out of the army.
But you cannot be. I just sent you a sweater.
I'm out. My father paid a bounty for me, and I'm home again. Who are these men, Catherine?
I'm, Billings, the cooper.
I be Wood, the alehouseman. Tradesman?
I?
What do we need a cooper and an alehouseman here?
Are you questioning me, husband?
Well, I'd like to know why a cooper and an alehouseman...
Welcome out. I welcome out. Ruddy hero. Come to home. Drink a cheer, boys. Ruddy hero, come to home. Ruddy hero, come to home. Come to home. Come to home.
Oh, husband.
Dear wife.
I was so proud of you when you were gone.
And you told people...
Oh, yes.
Drink a cheer. Here. Drink a cheer.
And now, wife?
We will celebrate, you and me and Mr. Billings and Mr. Wood.
Well, I
thought. We'll have a celebrate.
John, you're dusty from the road. Go wash. There's a full pail, always a full pail, always waiting for your return. Go wash.
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Aye, Katie.
Mr. Billings.
How did you come to marry such a one, Kate?
He's very rich.
And he's come home.
His wealth is assigned in my name. I receive it but in driblets.
Poor lady. Shame.
If I were a widow...
The money?
All at once. All mine.
Billings? Aye. Let's make a widow. And how to do that? You kill an husband, you make a widow. Ain't that an axe above the fireplace?
Oh, dear friends.
I washed Catherine.
I was proud.
Ruddy hero.
A soldier had come home, to his wife, to his neighbors. There was wine in the room and a good fire. But it was one of the shortest celebrations on record.
You are listening to Crime Classics and your host, Thomas Highland. This Saturday night, learn the true details of the Wheel of Misfortune case on Gangbusters. When a wheel, gangland terminology for a driver in a crime, runs afoul of the law, he cuts himself out of the crime in question. After the robbery comes off, the wheel declares himself in for a cut of the spoils, and murder results before police clamp the lid on the crooks. Gangbusters, this Saturday night on most of these same stations. The same evening to listen for CBS Radio's thrilling Gunsmoke series. And now once again, Thomas Highland and the second act of Crime Classics, and his report to you on John Hayes, his head, and how they were parted.
Historical background. We are concerned here with England in the early 1700s. George I sat upon the throne, and the terms Whig and Tory were being muttered and bandied about and chalked on walls. During one February, the great Sir Hugh Burdenney took time away from the Navy, went ashore long enough to invent the side pocket, only to die a year later in the Fijis. And in April, a month which concerns us most, King George put his queen in prison because of her part in the von Königsmarck affair. But we are concerned most with a citizen of the time, Mr. John Hayes. We hear of him next on the evening of April 22nd. Two lovers who had never heard of him strolled along the Thames. Strolled.
Let's sit here, Duck.
No, Thomas.
So they strolled on.
Mary, Duck, let's sit here.
Oh, no.
And on.
I like it here beneath the bridge, don't you?
Well?
See how the shadows lie like lacy web?
Where?
Yon.
Oh.
Let us sit and watch and see how they quiver as riding moon a trail in the sky.
Here?
Just so. Mary, duck, you are dear to me.
Hush.
And how to wash this torrent inside me. Fair Mary, fairest and most lovely. And now the blushes to your cheek beneath the moon.
Thomas.
Yes, Mary. I, too.
Thomas.
This is an unreality which we see, Mary. A conjugation of shadow and moonlight and...
But it has such curly hair.
Lacy shadows.
And eyes and lips that grinned. A head with no body. There in the mud.
It'll go away.
How can it? It's an abomination. Come.
It's not real.
It is real.
It is not.
Go see.
Duck.
Go see.
All right.
Well?
Go.
A head.
Of a man.
Of a curly-headed man. I knew it. Thomas Ascot, I did not want to come down here in the first place. You made me. You made me.
A head. Go.
So they discovered the head in the mud of the Thames. And after they married, they had a lot to talk about. It was the head of John Hayes, all right, but nobody knew it then. Thomas Ascot reported his unusual find to the constabulary, who went to the spot, saw that the lad was indeed a truthful lad, poked about, searching for a body to go with the head, failed, and then brought back what had been found to the sheriff's offices. They cleaned and combed the find, known as dressing the head in the trade. Then they mounted it neatly on a 10-foot pole. This was the custom of the day. Whenever an extra head was found, mount it on a pole, exhibit it in the town square so it could be identified. Nobody, however, came forward in the prescribed 3 days, so Dom Llewellyn was called in. Do that thing you do with glass, Dom, he was told, with heads, and close this one for preservation purposes. And Dom did, with caliper and a secretly fashioned glass and blowpipe. And Tom did. In the meanwhile, back at the home of Catherine Hayes, she's just stepped out of her door on her way to the cheese stall.
Mrs. Hayes! Woo! Mrs. Hayes!
Good morning to you,
To you. A marketing?
A marketing.
Mind you if I go along, if I walk with you.
Neighbor who walks alone, neighbor's alone.
Aye. Wise was the poet who first said that. Mrs. Hayes.
Yes?
A question.
Ninny do.
How go your two boarders?
Apace.
So?
Yes.
Mr. Wood is an attractive one. Wouldn't you say?
In truth, I had not noticed.
Nonny.
In truth.
I suppose you'll say you have not noticed the prettiness of Mr. Billings.
Not at all. Through the goodness of my heart for poor tradesmen, they live in my cellar. Truth, I never see them.
And Mr. Hayes, your husband.
Of him what?
I have not seen him. I heard he has returned from the army, but I have not seen him.
No wonder.
No wonder?
If he is on his way to Portugal, how could you see him?
How indeed? But Mrs. Hayes.
Yes?
So long he was in the army, then home to such as young and comely as you, then within 4 days he offs to Portugal.
Oh, restless John. My last words to him as he left.
Restless indeed. Huh. Would that my husband were restless like that, and off to Portugal. And a cooper like that Mr. Billings about. Some has all the lucky.
Mrs. Martin shook her head sadly all the way to the cheese stalls. There, she selected a good round Edam and went home and told all the neighbors that John Hayes had hied off to Portugal. And neighbors told neighbors, and everybody was satisfied. For a week. For it was a week later that Mrs. Martin went down to London on a visit to a friend. It was an infrequent trip for Mrs. Martin, and her friend took her around to show her the sights, the finest statuary, the best inns, and on a Sunday afternoon, he took her to see a head, which had been encapsulated by Dame Llewellyn, and which was on exhibition at the Constabulary Museum. And seeing it, Mrs. Martin said this.
Why, I do believe I know that man.
And her friend took her to the sheriff, to whom she repeated herself.
Why, I do believe I know that man.
What man?
Why, the man in that room there. The one whose head's in the glass.
You know him, you say?
Did he?
You're certain?
Did he? Did he do?
Who is he?
A neighbor to me. Husband to a young lass, poor lass.
Ah?
Poor lass, barely 17, I'd say. And her husband dead in such a way.
Who is she? What's her name?
Catherine. Catherine Hayes. And he who you've got, like you've got, is her hubby, dear. John Hayes. I be confused, I be.
How?
What's he doing in that room, like he is, when he's in Portugal?
What's he doing there, indeed? Madam.
Aye?
Will you take me to your neighbor?
Deedy? Deedy, I will.
We've had enough of you around, Katie and I.
We've had enough of you around, Katie and I. What say you, Katie?
Settle it between you.
Listen to me, alehouse man. I'd as soon slit your gullet as look at you. And I'll do it if you don't leave us alone.
Talking. That's all you're good at, Billings. Come to me so I can let the air out of you with a knife.
Aye!
Now settle it between you. Yes, who be you?
Sheriff of London Town.
For what?
If you be Mrs. John Hayes, I come to take you with me.
For what?
To show you of your husband, if he be the one whose head we have.
Head?
Aye. And, madam,
I?
the two men I espy over your shoulder, may I inquire of their worth?
Friends to me?
And your husband?
I would say so.
We will all ride down to London Town. And now, Mr. Wood, I will show you a thing. Come with me. Look, you. Who is this man whose head is in this glass?
I do not know.
Who is this man?
I do not know, I swear it. I am a pious man. When I swear a thing, it is sworn to. And it is the truth.
Very well. Sit there. Mr. Billings! Close the door, please. Walk to that table, Mr. Billings, and tell me whose head it is encased there. Mr. Billings?
Aye.
What have you done with the rest of Mr. Hayes?
Mr. Hayes?
Did you put an axe in such a way as to sever his head?
Me?
You.
No.
Very well. Sit there. Mrs. Hayes, please. Is that your husband's head who is on the table?
No,
You are not looking at the head, Mrs. Hayes.
nor do I need to. For my beloved husband, my strength and my love is in Portugal.
Mrs. Hayes,
What?
will you look at the head, please?
I will not.
I will bring it to you so you can see.
Do not.
For what reason?
Do not. Do not. Oh, do not. Do not. How can it be my hubby-love John when he is...
Pretend, Mrs. Hayes. Pretend he is not in Portugal, and so pretending tell me, is this your husband?
No.
Are you sure?
It is not my husband.
Perhaps you need a better look.
No, it is not John, not him.
I hold him by the hair and close to you. Now tell me.
John, hubby-love.
Your husband.
Yes, oh yes.
And how got he here?
They did it. Billings and Wood.
Say, liar!
No shame and no lies. You, the two of you evil men, killed him and severed his head.
Aye, while you fetched a pail to catch his head.
And laughed as you caught it.
In the name of His Majesty, I charge the three of you.
Charge them, not me.
The three of you.
And the three of them were tried. Billings and Wood on the charge of murder. Catherine on the charge of petty treason, which was 18th century talk for killing one's husband. All were found guilty. Wood died in jail. Billings was hung in chains. And Catherine... Let me read to you from a journal of the times concerning Catherine. An iron chain was placed about her body and fixed to a stake. On these occasions, when women were burned for petty treason, it was customary to strangle them by means of a rope passed round the neck and pulled by the executioner, so that they were dead before the flames reached the body. But the flames leaped so high that the executioner burned his hands, so that he could not strangle, so that Catherine Hayes was burned alive. It is interesting to note that a graph of petty treason in England for a whole year after that shows a decided drop before it picks up again.
In just a moment, Thomas Highland will tell you about next week's crime classic. John Hayes, tonight's crime classic, was adapted from the original court reports and newspaper accounts by Morton Fine and David Friedkin. The music was composed and conducted by Bernard Herrmann, and the program is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. Thomas Highland is portrayed on radio by Lou Merrill. In tonight's story, Betty Harford was heard as Catherine, Jeanette Nolan as Mrs. Martin, and Alistair Duncan as John Hayes. Featured in the cast were Ben Wright, Richard Peel, Charles Davis, and William Johnstone. Bob Lamont speaking. Here again is Thomas Highland.
Next week, Mahadwat, India, in the year 1894. We will concern ourselves with a father and son who just didn't get along, to the point where one of them had to go. My report to you will be on Rashi among the crocodiles and the prank he played. Thank you. Good night.
From the stars of old Vienna to Rodgers and Hammerstein, hear a cavalcade of musical treats illustrating how easy it is to become stage-struck, the Broadway musical way, with Guy Bolton and P.G. Wodehouse as guides. Hear the evolution of musical comedy with a host of stars on most of these same stations Friday night, when CBS Radio presents Stage Struck. Lionel Barrymore's Radio Hall of Fame is great Sunday night drama on the CBS Radio Network.